The moment Mike Sullivan watched his daughter collapse on the soccer field, he knew their lives would never be the same. What he couldn't have known was that a chance encounter with a stranger, a billionaire with his own painful past, would transform their darkest hour into something neither of them could have imagined. If you've ever felt like life has pushed you past your breaking point, this story might just give you the hope you need today. Hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of survivors and dreamers who believe that sometimes, when you've lost everything, you're actually on the verge of finding what truly matters. Mike Sullivan stared at the eviction notice taped to his apartment door, the bold red letters blurring as tears filled his eyes. 30 days. They had 30 days before they would be homeless. He crumpled the paper in his fist and leaned his forehead against the door, taking a deep breath before entering. He couldn't let Emma see him like this. His 12-year-old daughter had enough to worry about without knowing they were about to lose the roof over their heads. "Dad? Is that you?" Emma called from her bedroom, her voice weaker than it had been just months ago, before the diagnosis. "Yeah, sweetheart. Just grabbing the mail." Mike forced cheerfulness into his voice as he shoved the eviction notice into his pocket. He walked to Emma's room, where she sat propped up against pillows, a colorful scarf wrapped around her head. The leukemia treatments had taken her hair, but not her smile. That smile was the only thing keeping him going some days. "How was work?" she asked, setting aside the book she'd been reading. Mike hesitated. There was no work anymore. The construction company had let him go last week after he'd missed too many days taking Emma to treatments. They'd been sympathetic but firm, business was business. The medical bills were piling up faster than he could count them, and their insurance had maxed out months ago. "It was fine," he lied, sitting on the edge of her bed. "How are you feeling today? Any better?" Emma shrugged. "The same. Dr. Patel says I'm responding well to the treatments, though." Mike nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. The treatments were working, but they couldn't afford to continue them. Not without insurance, not without income. Not with an eviction looming. 3 years after losing his wife to a drunk driver, he was about to lose everything else. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep, Mike sat at the kitchen table surrounded by bills marked "Final Notice" and "Past Due." He'd sold his truck. He'd pawned his wedding ring. He'd borrowed from everyone who would lend to him. There was nothing left to sell, no one left to ask for help. Tomorrow, he would have to tell Emma the truth. They would have to stop her treatments. The thought made him physically ill. Mike didn't realize he was crying until a tear splashed onto one of the bills. He wiped his face roughly with the back of his hand and reached for his laptop. Maybe there was some assistance program he hadn't tried yet, some miracle he'd overlooked. As he scrolled through search results he'd already explored dozens of times, an ad caught his eye: Sullivan Construction, quality work, fair prices. It wasn't his company, just the same last name, but seeing it gave him an idea. He'd been a foreman before Emma got sick. He knew every aspect of construction. Maybe he could start his own small business, taking weekend jobs, working nights. It was a desperate plan, but desperation was all he had left. He stayed up until dawn creating a simple website and business cards he couldn't afford to print. When Emma woke up, he told her he was starting his own business. Her eyes lit up with pride, and for a moment, he allowed himself to believe it might work. That afternoon, Mike stood in the parking lot of a local coffee shop, handing out his hastily made business cards to anyone who would take them. Most people avoided eye contact or politely took a card he knew they would throw away. After 3 hours, he had distributed all 50 cards and had nothing to show for it. Defeated, he went inside to buy a coffee with some of his last dollars. As he waited in line, he overheard a man in an expensive suit arguing on his phone. "I don't care what it costs. The contractor bailed, and I need this community center finished before winter. Find someone, anyone, who can take over the project." The man hung up and ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair in frustration. Mike hesitated only a second before approaching him. "Excuse me, sir. I couldn't help overhearing. I'm a contractor." He extended his hand. "Mike Sullivan." The man looked Mike up and down, taking in his worn jeans and faded t-shirt. "Alexander Reed," he said, shaking Mike's hand with a firm grip. "You have a crew ready to go?" "I can assemble one by tomorrow," Mike said, praying it wasn't a lie. He still had contacts in the industry, guys who might be willing to work for him if the money was right. Alexander studied him for a long moment. "Show me your portfolio." Mike's heart sank. He had nothing to show. His previous work had been for his employer, not himself. I'm just starting my own business. But I was a foreman at Daniel's Construction for 8 years before that." "Daniel's, huh?" Alexander pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Mike could hear only one side of the conversation, but it was clear Alexander was checking his references. After a few minutes, Alexander hung up and handed Mike a business card. "My office, tomorrow, 9 a.m. Bring whatever documentation you have. We'll talk." Mike stared at the card. Alexander Reed, CEO of Reed Enterprises. He'd heard of Reed, everyone in the city had. The billionaire developer was known for transforming abandoned properties into community spaces, for his philanthropy, and for his reclusive nature since the death of his wife and son in a plane crash 5 years ago. "Thank you, Mr. Reed. I'll be there." That night, Mike told Emma about the potential job. "It's a big project, sweetheart. If I get it, we might be okay for a while." Emma smiled weakly. "You'll get it, Dad. I know you will." The next morning, Mike dropped Emma at her grandmother's house and drove to the gleaming Reed Enterprises tower downtown. He'd stayed up all night preparing, gathering certificates, references, and creating a rough project plan based on what little he knew about the community center. Alexander Reed's office occupied the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, but Reed wasn't looking at the view. He sat behind a massive desk, reviewing documents as Mike entered. "Sullivan," he said without looking up. "Sit." Mike sat, clutching his folder of documents. For the next hour, Reed grilled him on every aspect of construction, from foundation work to finishing touches. Mike answered each question confidently, drawing on his years of experience. Finally, Reed leaned back in his chair. "The community center is in Westside. It's meant to serve low-income families, provide after-school programs, job training. The previous contractor cut corners, used substandard materials. I fired them. The project is already behind schedule and over budget." "I understand, sir." "Do you?" Reed's eyes narrowed. "This isn't just another building to me. It's named after my son, David. He was 12 when he died." Mike felt a chill run through him. Emma was 12. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Reed." Reed waved away his sympathy. "I need someone who cares about doing this right, not just someone who needs a paycheck." "With all due respect, sir, I do need the paycheck," Mike said honestly. "But I also understand what it means to build something that will last, something that honors someone you love." Something in Reed's expression shifted. "You have kids, Sullivan?" "A daughter. Emma. She's 12. Reed was silent for a long moment. Then he pushed a contract across the desk. 3 months to completion. Budget's tight, but the bonus for on-time delivery is substantial. Don't make me regret this." Mike stared at the contract, at the figure on the bottom line. It was enough to pay the rent, enough to continue Emma's treatments, maybe even enough to start rebuilding their lives. "You won't regret it, Mr. Reed. I promise." The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Mike assembled a crew of trusted former colleagues, all willing to work for him based on his reputation alone. The community center project was challenging. The previous contractor had indeed cut corners, requiring them to tear out and redo significant portions of the work. But Mike was in his element, solving problems, leading his team, creating something meaningful. Alexander Reed visited the site frequently, watching the progress with a critical eye. He rarely spoke to Mike directly, communicating mostly through his project managers. But Mike often felt Reed's gaze following him as he worked alongside his crew, never asking them to do anything he wouldn't do himself. One evening, as Mike was reviewing plans after everyone else had left, Reed appeared beside him. "You're here late, Sullivan." Mike looked up, startled. "Just making sure we're on track for tomorrow, sir." Reed nodded, looking around at the partially completed building. "It's starting to take shape." "Yes, sir. We should have the roof completed by next week, then we can focus on the interior." Reed was quiet for a moment. "Why construction, Sullivan?" The question caught Mike off guard. "I like building things. Creating something permanent, something that matters." He hesitated, then added, "And it's what I'm good at. After my wife died, it was important to have something I could count on." Reed's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. "Your daughter. How is she?" Mike was surprised Reed remembered. She's sick, actually. Leukemia. But she's fighting hard." Reed nodded once, sharply, as if confirming something to himself. "Don't miss her treatments for this job, Sullivan. Family comes first." Before Mike could respond, Reed was walking away, his expensive shoes echoing on the concrete floor. The next day, Mike received a call from Emma's doctor. "Mr. Sullivan, we need to discuss Emma's treatment plan. There's a new protocol that might be more effective for her specific case, but..." The doctor paused. "It's experimental, and your insurance won't cover it." Mike's heart sank. "How much?" The figure the doctor named made Mike's knees weak. It was more than he would make from the entire community center project, even with the bonus. I'll have to get back to you, doctor." That night, Mike sat beside Emma's bed, watching her sleep. The treatments were taking their toll. She was thin, pale, her once vibrant energy dimmed. But she was still fighting, still smiling, still his brave girl. He couldn't give up on her. He wouldn't. The next morning, Mike arrived at the construction site early, determined to push the project ahead faster. If they finished early, maybe the bonus would be larger. Maybe he could take on another project immediately afterward. Maybe. He was so lost in thought that he didn't notice Alexander Reed standing in the shadows, watching him work with an intensity that would have unnerved him had he seen it. A week later, Mike was called to Reed's office again. He went with trepidation, wondering if there was a problem with the project. But when he arrived, Reed wasn't alone. A distinguished-looking man in a lab coat sat across from him. "Sullivan, this is Dr. James Chen. He's the head of oncology at Reed Memorial Hospital." Mike shook the doctor's hand automatically, confusion evident on his face. "Dr. Chen has been reviewing your daughter's case," Reed continued. "He believes she would be an excellent candidate for a new treatment protocol his team has developed." Mike looked between the two men, not comprehending. "How do you know about my daughter's case?" Reed's expression remained neutral. "I make it my business to know about the people who work for me. Dr. Chen's protocol has shown promising results in cases similar to Emma's." Dr. Chen leaned forward. "Mr. Sullivan, I'd like to offer Emma a place in our clinical trial. All expenses would be covered by the Reed Foundation." Mike felt like the floor was tilting beneath him. "I don't understand. Why would you do this?" For the first time, Reed's composed facade cracked slightly. "My son, David, had leukemia. The same type as your daughter. He didn't respond to standard treatments. By the time we found an experimental option, it was too late. He paused, his jaw tight. No parent should have to lose a child because they can't afford treatment. Mike couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. This wasn't charity, it was something deeper, something born of shared pain. The trial is legitimate, Dr. Chen assured him. Emma would receive the best care possible, regardless of your financial situation. Say yes, Sullivan, Reed said quietly. Let us help your daughter. 2 days later, Emma was admitted to Reed Memorial Hospital. The facility was state-of-the-art, the staff compassionate and attentive. Dr. Chen personally oversaw Emma's care, explaining each step of the treatment to both Emma and Mike in terms they could understand. Mike continued working on the community center, now with renewed energy and purpose. His crew, sensing his changed spirits, worked with similar dedication. The project began to move ahead of schedule. Alexander Reed continued his regular visits to the site, but now he sometimes asked about Emma. His questions were brief, clinical, but Mike could sense the genuine concern behind them. Occasionally, Reed would make suggestions about Emma's care, books she might enjoy during treatment, foods that might taste good despite the nausea, little comforts that revealed an intimate knowledge of what a child with cancer endured. One evening, Mike arrived at the hospital to find Reed sitting beside Emma's bed, a chessboard between them. Emma was laughing, actually laughing, as Reed dramatically bemoaned a move she had made. Checkmate in 3 moves, Emma declared triumphantly. You're terrible at this, Mr. Reed. I'm letting you win, Reed protested, though the slight smile on his face suggested otherwise. Dad! Emma spotted Mike in the doorway. Mr. Reed brought me this awesome chess set. It's made of marble. And I'm totally crushing him. Mike stood frozen, watching this unexpected scene. Reed looked up, and for a brief moment, their eyes met in perfect understanding. Then Reed stood, straightening his suit jacket. Your daughter is a shark, Sullivan. Watch yourself around her. As Reed passed Mike in the doorway, he paused. The new MRI results came back. Dr. Chen will explain, but it's good news. The weeks passed. The community center neared completion, ahead of schedule and under budget. Emma's health improved steadily under Dr. Chen's protocol. Her hair began to grow back, a soft fuzz of brown that she proudly displayed by discarding her scarves. Her energy returned, her appetite improved, and the light came back to her eyes. Mike found an envelope on his desk at the construction site one morning. Inside was a key and an address. A note in Reed's precise handwriting read simply, a more suitable place for recovery. No rent for the first year. Consider it part of your bonus for the early completion. The address led to a small but beautiful house in a good neighborhood, close to both the hospital and a well-regarded school. Mike stood on the sidewalk, staring at the house in disbelief. It was modest by Reed's standards, surely, but to Mike and Emma, it was a palace. When he tried to thank Reed, to explain that it was too much, Reed cut him off. It's an investment property. I need a caretaker. The arrangement benefits us both. His tone brooked no argument, and Mike recognized the pride that prevented Reed from acknowledging his own generosity. The day the community center was completed, a small ceremony was held. Local officials made speeches, community members expressed gratitude, and Alexander Reed stood stoically as a ribbon was cut on the David Reed Community Center. Mike watched from the back of the crowd, Emma beside him, her hand in his. After the ceremony, as the crowd dispersed, Reed approached them. He looked at Emma, taking in her recovering health with evident satisfaction. What do you think of the building, Emma? Emma studied the center thoughtfully. It's beautiful. My dad built it, you know. Reed's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. I'm aware. He did an exceptional job.